This is going to be a bit of a video on time trial positions over the years. So next week and a couple of weeks after that, I've got the RTTC National Time Trial Championships, which is cycling time trials organisations national championships. So that's kind of my peak event for the season. After which I'll be taking my off season. So in preparing for that and thinking about potential changes I want to make to my time trial position in the off season, I've been looking at and thinking about different time trial positions, which kind of I'd say the main way you do that as an amateur cyclist is you look at what the top guys are currently doing, as that's like the pinnacle of the sport. You're trying to understand why they're making certain changes, and then if it makes sense, then try and emulate what they're doing. Not just blindly doing it, trying to understand why they're doing it first, as if they're doing it for a reason that you misunderstood, like it might not have the desired positive effect you're looking for, I guess. So yeah, I just made this dumb meme comparing the old school and the new school time trialist. I mean, me being a modern time trialist, of course, like yeah, it's mainly just the respect that I have for like what the old guys were doing back in the day. It's like absolutely crazy how they were with how much equipment's progressed over the past 50 years. Like what they were still able to the efforts they were still able to produce is just absolutely incredible, really. Um, and as a modern time trialist, like I'm going to use every tool at my disposal to like go as fast as possible. Like I'm not feeling bad that I'm not riding on a Merc steel frame. Like I'm gonna try and optimize my position as much as possible, optimize my training as much as possible, like using all the metrics I have. But then at the same time, like I've done during my time trial season so far, I've found that there's science involved behind the training and the racing. There is a lot of art to it, I'd say, where the metrics don't matter at the end a lot of the time at the end of the day. So I'll typically just glance at what my power is, what my heart rate is, what my core body temperature is, but it doesn't really matter. Like rate of perceived exertion is kind of more important. Like if I see a super high core body temperature or a very high heart rate, and I still feel good, then I can just keep pushing and find what my limits are. And equally, if my power meter's reading funny, it's like under reading or over reading. Like I'm not gonna get fixated on that. I just glance at the value and go, okay, it looks on track. And so this year it's been I have speed as my primary metric, and I have an idea of how fast I want to be going. And if I'm not going that fast, then it's like, okay, you need to either push harder on the pedals or get more aero. It's like pretty straightforward, a bit more old school in that respect. Like I could imagine riding without a power meter. I guess when Dan Bigham and Filippo Garner did their hour records, like they didn't have a power meter. They just had I mean, it was a bit more straightforward where they had a single gear and a fixed cadence that they knew they'd be working to. You have a better intuition for keeping to that 95 RPM or the fixed cadence they're working at. But it's the same thing where they know how hard they need to be trying. You have that inside your head. I don't think I'd be able to ride without GPS and feedback of how fast I'm actually going though. That'd be different gravy. But yeah, huge. Basically, just have a huge amount of respect for what the old guys are doing. If I do a time trial and someone else does more power than me, but let's say they do a worse time, my instinct isn't looking at that and going, "Wow, they're such a better athlete than me." It's that combination between the two, where it's all very well and good having loads of power, but if you've not optimized your position, then it doesn't matter. The time and the speed is what should be your primary aim at the end of the day, rather than chasing any power goals. I guess what I'm saying. Yeah, so like I said, I did a dumb meme that I made, and it was loosely based off of probably my two biggest inspirations in the sport, with Dan Bigham and then Graham O'Brien. Yeah, probably two of the most revolutionary riders in the sport. So it'd be interesting to compare them because they were actually similarly built athletes. Like you'd assume Dan, because Dan's so aero, you'd think he's quite a small guy, but he's actually not. So Dan is 183 centimeters, roughly 75 kilos, and Aubrey was 180 centimeters, 73 kilos. So not much in difference between their physiologies, and which is interesting because with Dan getting his hour record and having like a low power, which is what people were saying back along, especially compared to Ghana, obviously. But it's because his CDA is so fantastic. And talking of fantastic CDA, we've got the goat in Graham in the old on his Old Faithful bike, and in the Old Faithful position, which is the CDA that he. This was roughly 30 years before the optimizations that Dan was able to make, and quoted he did actually test Old Faithful in a wind tunnel with some cycling magazine, and had a CDA of 0.172 compared to Dan. I heard Dan quote a CDA of 0.164 for like his time trialing position for the hour record. So considering all the advances in yes, the rider is roughly 80% of the aerodynamics of the total vehicle, but yeah, considering the advancements in technology, and that's it's a big increase, especially at the sharp end. But basically the position that Graham was able to get into to minimize his drag was just phenomenal. And like if there was optimized equipment, modern equipment with the Old Faithful position, we'd probably find that this is still the most aerodynamic. Because I mean, this image is just ridiculous to me. I mean, he looks like an aerofoil. Like I can't imagine a more optimized position than that, really. Like with the UCI banning Old Faithful, and then after that banning the Superman position that Aubrey adopted after that, and we've moved to this conventional time trial position. It's getting very optimized, and it's interesting to see where the next big improvements will be, because we are just converging to a set point. So maybe there'll be some revolutionary person to come up with some completely new position, and that's what it's going to take to be a next step forward. Because, like I say, we with the UCI banning this, like take a step back to the conventional position, and then that conventional position has now been like optimized so much that yeah, interesting to see where it goes forward. But for me, getting to this sort of position is the aim, and then maybe come up with some crazy new idea. I don't know. I quoted the CDA numbers of probably 0.164 for Bigham and 0.172 for Aubrey. Now, based on my last time trial, for example, I'd say I'm approaching a CDA of 0.18, so probably 0.18 to 0.19. So yeah, still a ways to go to get to either of the two greats, but more tangible numbers. Obviously, that Graham was known for attempting and breaking the hour record. So Aubrey's hour record was 52.713 kilometers, and then when Dan broke the hour record in 2022 before helping Ghana to break it after that, Dan did 55.548 kilometers, so a bit under 3 kilometers. So it's a big difference, but 30 years of evolving the technology and the position. It's crazy how far Aubrey and Boardman were able to get in the back in the days, which is why like have a huge amount of respect for that. A lot of instinct, a lot of passion. Yeah, just having an idea and running with it, I guess, from this position where it's absolutely bonkers. But the fact that Graham was able to produce like this, like I said, I don't think this position could be improved upon. I don't see how a human could get more aero than this. In it looking like they're on a bike. Obviously, we've got like the lying down position, but that's not a bike. That's something else. But the fact that he was able to produce decent power in this position is just absolutely phenomenal. Like, it's so cramped. Like, people complain about their hip angle and wanting shorter cranks. Like, mate, look at this. Like, yes, we have a power trade-off in the modern position compared to what we can produce on a road bike, but we're able to still produce so much more than Graham. Was absolutely bananas, mate. Absolute legend. Yeah, so much respect for that. And I don't know, maybe 10 years time we'll be looking like something like that again, but UCI will probably ban it. I don't know. Like I say, it's weird because is it just going to be the athlete? Is it just going to be getting Josh Tarling to an extent where he's optimized his CDA as much as possible? Um, I don't know. And obviously, physiological demands. Josh Tarling is big, is a lot taller and a bigger guy than Bigham. And but then is it just the engine at the end of the day? Yeah, we'll have to see. Yeah, the position on Old Faithful is the most iconic Graham O'Brien position. But then after the UCI banned it, he created this new Superman position, which is was kind of perfected by Chris Boardman, you could say. So Chris Boardman went to break the hour record and do 56.375 kilometers. So kind of smashed it, and then after which the UCI stepped in again and said, "Oh no, this isn't allowed," and reverted the hour record back to like a Merckx-esque one on a steel frame, which is yeah. Like I say, I don't see where else we could go from here. Where it's quite limited in the time trial positions, but this Superman position that Aubrey introduced and then Boardman perfected was certainly less aerodynamic than the Old Faithful position. This focuses a lot on, yes, your frontal area is extremely important. So with stretching your body out, you're and having it as like flat a back as possible, you're reducing that frontal area, but you're really stretching out this. If you're working with different yaw angles, especially outside, like this expansiveness of the space you're taking up is a lot more than this cramped position that's got is a one solid block rather than being a lot more spread out, which is what Dan and Aubrey have achieved with their positions. But yeah, still phenomenal that he was able to do such a impressive hour record and able to produce a lot more power than compared to the Old Faithful position because of yes, it's extremely aggressive, but not nearly as aggressive as Old Faithful, I'd say. And yeah, I'd say Boardman was the guy who really optimized this. Moving to the next generation, the early 2000s, with the really low hands position, and yeah, this position is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I guess back then the idea was to have as flat a back as possible, slam the stem as much as possible, get low hands. He's got extremely low hands, and his back is so flat that it's actually like curving. The upper part of his back is actually like curving down at the front, which is kind of what we see with modern positions where we want a little bit of that curvature in the back. But with the curvature, it means like he's before the air's like hitting his rear, it's his shoulders are that low. So yeah, just absolutely crazy position Boardman was able to get into. UCI banned Superman position and Old Faithful, the two probably most revolutionary positions. So then we end up converging to the most conventional time trial position with this low hands approach and a flat back. And he wasn't you could say there was better time trialists in that era, but I guess I'm a bit Brit biased here. But yeah, Wiggins was a very good time trialist in his day. Say there was better riders, Tom Dumoulin, Tony Martin, but just looking, Brad's a great example of kind of evolving on the Boardman position, where it's a very similar approach, trying to get as low hands as possible and just a flat back. I guess not. I don't know if it seems like a lot of the time they didn't have the most disciplined head position, and I think this era was more categorized by like the advances in science and like moving to a physiologically gifted athlete rather than someone who focused loads on the aerodynamics. So it was kind of like a raw Watt fest really. And with the advances in training around that time, it was the guy who won was the guy who was producing the most power rather than someone who really focused on the CDA. And I guess that's what characterized the Bigham era, where moved away from thinking that it was purely about power and understanding how influential CDA was. Like, so I'd say this era is more just extremely the limits of power production, like optimizing training, optimizing racing strategy. rather than trying to get really aero on the bike. So yeah, this is Marcin Bieloblocky, who actually, if you're familiar with UK time trialing and like CTT, he has all the records, and kind of that Bigham sort of era where really focusing on position. CTT is great for that. It doesn't have the UCI regulation, so there's you can push if you want to. You can push the boat out a little bit more if you're willing to experiment with that. So yeah, quite ahead of its time. The position that Marcin was getting into, and like really trying to get the hands, the head being continuous with the back, and nice curvature to streamline with the helmet. To try and like almost get the whole body within the wake of the helmet, and then just we're never going to get the hands and the arms out the way to the extent that Aubry could, but getting them like rolling the shoulders up and getting them right close to the face. Yeah, Marcin was an absolute animal. His records in the CTC organisation are yeah, one big lofty goals to aim towards for sure. Yeah, he was an absolute monster on the bike. Like he was a big guy, 197 centimeters, 79 kilos, so a fair bit bigger than the riders we've seen, like Wiggins, 190 centimeters, but 69 kilos. You know, because he was a Grand Tour rider, whereas Marcin was a bit of a time trial specialist. But yeah, like looking at Marcin's records, like a 10-mile TT in 16-minute 35 outside, and a 25 and 42:58, where he did 428 watts for 43 minutes. Like, yeah, absolute animal. Like that mixture. Like there's a huge focus on aero with the position with the bike. But yeah, he was an absolute beast as well. And I guess that's where I think the future of time trialing is heading, where the 2010s era was characterized by just focusing on raw power. Then we're thinking a lot more about CDA, but like I was mentioning, where we're kind of converging to an optimum place, like who's going to be the next great rider. And we've got the Olympics time trial going on tomorrow, and these two are almost certainly the favourites. And my money's on Josh Tarling. I think Josh Tarling's like the future of time trialing, really. Like he has the resources, working on Ineos, working with Dan, to optimize his position as much as possible. But his engine and his potential, being 20 years old and having producing absolutely bananas watts, like yeah, just that mixture of really focusing on position, but then also just having the engine and working on that engine. And Remco also has a fantastic engine. Remco's position is his CDA is absolutely fantastic. Like there's a reason why he's the world champion currently. And yes, Glasgow is a rolling course, but he'll win flat time trials because his aerodynamics are just so good. And he has the power to boot. Like yes, he doesn't have the same power as Tarling, but he has very good power to come third in the Tour de France. Like you have to be producing a lot of watts. And so yeah, Remco's position, like pretty much probably the most advanced in the world tour. He's a fair bit smaller than Dan Bigham, so like, and I'd say getting to being close to as optimized as Dan, and the fact that Remco is just a smaller person, like he probably has a lower CDA than what Bigham was able to produce for his hour record, and being probably a more physiologically gifted athlete, like he's able to produce more power with a lower CDA. So yeah, Remco is amazing, and it's not just when it comes to hills where he's benefiting in being a smaller athlete and having better watts per kilo. It's flat time trials as well. But with having absolute monster watts also kind of helps for the more rolling time trials. Absolute power that Josh is able to produce to get over hills, like you'll see him doing extremely well in hilly time trials, because yeah, it just flattens the hills really. Of course, for Paris is relatively technical, but it is pancake flat, so I'd expect Josh to his raw power, and he does have a fantastic CDA. I mean, his position on the bike is fantastic. and I would expect him to win. And I do think he's the future of time trialing, being only 20 years old. So there's room to grow there. And I feel like if he turned up to a CTT event and had a relatively floaty day, like he'd be able to contest Martin's records for sure. Like he was meant to turn up to a 25 miler earlier in the season. I was thinking there's a good chance that he's gonna break the 43-minute barrier, even though it wasn't the fastest course. Um, but yeah, just really interesting to see where Josh's career goes, because, like I say, I think he's going to win the Olympic gold medal tomorrow, and then from there, like there's still so much more to go with being so young at 20 years old.